Hey guys, Tempest here once again. In this video we'll be discussing what prio in H.A.T format actually means and why it's perfectly normal for you to say prio in this format as well, of course when it's relevant. Those of you who played GOAT or Edison format will know that ignition priority is a very common mechanic used in these formats mostly to the turn player's benefit, as they could be used during the summon response window. In formats before 2012, you could summon something like Tribe Infecting Virus or Judgment Dragon and use their effects to destroy whole fields before your opponent had the chance to use something like Bottomless Trap Hole, as we see here. In these cases, if the summon was not negated by something like Solemn Judgment or Solemn Warning, you as the turn player could use cards to the summon first. That's the same as it is to this day still. But back then, Spell Speed 1 Ignition effects also had the chance to get used here. So you could treat it like a bonus for playing something like Lila, Lumina, here in hand, Red Eyes Darkness Metal Dragon, Dimensional Alchemist, Thousand Eyes Restrict, Brionac Dragon of the Ice Buyer, etc. It was universally understood that if you stated prio, you were referring to ignition priority. Note that cards like Breaker or Arcanite Magician could not use ignition priority ruling to their benefit because they first have to resolve their trigger effects. Also, another example would be already having something like Chaos Sorcerer on the field and using Monster Reborners on something. When that monster gets summoned, even if it didn't have any ignition effect itself, you could use Chaos Sorcerer's effect as Chain Link 1 in the summon response window. So in that way you could actually use Breaker or Arcanite if you summon them before you reborn something with Monster Reborn. So when the monster gets summoned, before we move on, we should also mention cards like Black Garden or Stumbling here, which are mandatory effects that trigger on a summon and since ignition effects cannot be chain link 2 or higher, these were the cards that prevented an on summon judgment effect nuke or Dark Arm Dragon pop, for example, because they had to activate on the summon and then you had to use ignition effects in a separate chain. So anyway, let's get to what priority means in H.A.T format. So in 2014, 2 years after ignition priority has been removed from the game. So priority as a turn can nowadays only mean turn player priority. Turn player priority can be used when game state is open and you want to benefit by doing something before your opponent. If you don't want to do anything and your opponent also doesn't want to do anything, you may choose to leave the phase or step you're currently in and move to the next one. Sometimes you want for your opponent to use something first because you're suspecting he wants to do something, and sometimes you want to use something before your opponent has the chance to do so. So similarly to how often chain burn players activate all their back row in sequence without asking your opponent for a response after each card, you as a non-turn player sometimes simply cannot activate something before your opponent, according to Yu-Gi-Oh! Game mechanics. In Edison format, one very relevant case for using turn player's priority is the ability for the turn player to use Mystical Space Typhoon as the 4th card in your hand immediately after you draw it. So you are still under 4 cards when your opponent has Trap Dash Shoot, so that you leave them without a legal activation window. So that you activate MST at the start of your turn, so at the start of your draw phase. And when does this actually come up in H.A.T format? We can make 2 different but similar cases for this. First are open game state actions at the start of steps and phases, such as activating Rescue Rabbit, here on the right, which was, for example, on the field from the previous turn. So this means at the start of main phase 1, he cannot get hit by another Veiler. Or maybe putting tanky boosted Bujin Yamato to defense once again at the start of main phase 1, so Ragna 0 cannot destroy him. In both of these cases, when your opponent confirms leaving standby phase is okay with him as well, you can say prio, as in turn player priority, and do any of these actions. So just to elaborate, so we summoned Rescue Rabbit, turn 1, he got hit by Veiler, we set bottomless trap hole, opponent summoned Raiden, we bottomless Raiden, and he cannot do anything else, so he passes turn. And then immediately when we end standby phase, because Veiler cannot be used, can only be used in main phase, we will be able to banish Rescue Rabbit as cost, so our opponent has no legal activation window to activate this Veiler if we want to use this priority. And yeah, we for sure want to do that. Yeah, similar here, we summoned Yamato, then he summons Ragna 0, doesn't pop it, I guess, and doesn't pop it as well in draw phase or standby phase. When we agree to go to main phase, we can easily put this Yamato to defense before he can use Ragna 0, even though it's a quick effect at the start of main phase 1. Then we can just summon Hirume and make Arc and destroy this Ragna 0. Yeah, in other possible actions, apart from using spell speed 1 effects or changing battle positions, as we saw here, are actually all kinds of summons, so normal and special summon, that do not start a chain, including set and flip summons, as we saw here. Yeah, here. So including set and flip summons, also activating a card or effect of any spell speed, declaring an attack in battle phase only, of course, and drawing in draw phase only. Or you can immediately try to leave the phase or step you're in to which your opponent may oppose. So someone who doesn't know rulings all that well might say in both of these scenarios, as seen in these print screens, that he wants to use his spell speed 2 effect, so Ragna 0 for example, which simply isn't the case. You as a turn player can use spell speed 1 effect, here of Rescue Rabbit on the right before that. If you of course didn't say I pass prio, then you missed your chance, you gave your opponent the chance to activate this Veiler. And Ragna 0 on the left should have simply activated in standby phase. In main phase, you can switch Yamato to defense, as we said. There is another major example where turn player priority is used by player's choice and not because ruling states so, such as forming a chain when two ice hands crash into each other, where turn player has to put his ice hand as chain link 1 if he wants to use it, and there's no way to form the chain in other way. I'd call that using turn player's priority in response to something. Here we have two very good examples of when you'd want to call out prio to your opponent to make sure you are activating quick or spell speed 2 effects on the summon of a card. So let's go with the left one first. If the summon of Evil Swarm Exciton Knight on the left goes through, you are first able to use his effect because the turn player can first respond to the summon with spell speed 2 effects. So not by using ignition priority rule as we discussed in the first part of the video. Why would you want to do this and maybe not wait if your opponent wants to use bottomless trap hole, for example, and then you can chain Evil Swarm Exciton Knight? Well, sometimes you want to miss timing of stuff, but in this provided case, if you pass prio on the summon, your opponent has the option to use his card first then, and if he uses something like XYZ Encore or Phoenix Wing Wind Blast, his field and hand count will get equal to ours, so we won't be able to use exit on knight as chain link 2 anymore because discarding is a cost. Unless we have something like DD Crow or Maxi to discard as chain link 2 then, and then use exit on as chain link 3. That is the only option we'll get to use this exit on then. Anyway, since a lot of decks play discard for cost hand traps, you almost always want to use card discard immediately to avoid a scenario such as this one. Let's go to the right example. Your opponent has Abyss Dweller with a water monster as XYZ material, which makes him a 2200 body. Then you summon Ragna 0. And as the turn player, you may choose to use Ragna 0's effect first, which means he'll detach. You can use his effect immediately on the summon. And even if your opponent chains Abyss Dweller to Ragna 0's effect, which means he'll lose attack as cost, he'll still get destroyed by Ragna 0 and you still get to draw. If you, however, pass prio when summoning Ragna, your opponent can use Abyss Dweller as chain link 1 on the summon, and Ragna cannot use her effect anymore, even in chain, because Abyss Dweller's attack boosting effect is continuous, and it already lost the boost. Somewhat similar scenario is when your opponent summons, for example, a Dragon Ruler by banishing a different Dragon Ruler, and the summon is not negated, as always in these cases. Then if they don't immediately, as the turn player, trigger Banish Dragon Ruler's optional effect, and you ask if they have anything in response to the summon, they say no. You may either activate something like Bottomless Trap Hole or simply pass the window to open game state. If they decide to activate Banish Dragon Ruler's effect, that window has already passed and it would be an illegal move. It may be the reason that they don't know rulings very well, but they could as well just be testing if you have any back row they want to play around. In any case, it's for you to decide if you allow them to use Banish Dragon Ruler's effect as chain link 1 on the summon of the Dragon Ruler, since according to turn player's priority, they have to do so first, before you may respond with anything. Had that add-in effect been mandatory, you could simply correct the mistake, issue a warning, and move on. It could as well be argued that stating prio in formats after ignition priority was abolished. It is actually meaningless, since then you could state the same for something like Grand Spellbook Tower. In standby phase. So if your opponent for some reason lets you end the draw phase and has a change of heart with something like Artifact Sanctum, so he can destroy your field spell with Artifact Moraltech before it has the chance to activate, they cannot do so, since you may state you want to use Tower's effect at the start of the turn using turn player's priority. To avoid the just mentioned scenarios where your opponent could argue you didn't say prio, it's simply best to state so even in these cases. For passing priority, even Yu-Gi-Oh! Wikia has the following written as a guideline. The player with priority can decline to activate their effect by stating I pass priority or similar. So yeah, here the opposite surely should be the case as well. In conclusion, when someone responds to you saying prio either in an online game or in real life, like there is no prio in hard format, you are probably playing against someone who isn't well versed in Yu-Gi-Oh! Terminology or was playing too much pre-2012 era formats. Ignition priority might be a thing of the past in hot format, but turn player priority is still very much relevant, as we saw in these cases. Understanding it might be the difference between a win and a loss of an important match. As usual, thanks for watching and have a nice one.